Today's session is going to be about social media marketing. So I know that a lot of you all had some questions just in general about how to utilize social media to market your products or your services. So we went ahead and brought Julia, an awesome person, to talk about this. So you already know us. We are the hosts of today's every Friday session in the IMAGINEi5 team. So I'm going to introduce Julia. Julia Roberts, awesome name, is the founder and CEO of Prisma Media. So Julia, I'm going to let you introduce yourself really quick.
All right. So like Sarah said, I'm the founder and CEO of Prisma Media. We're a boutique graphic design company. We serve clients like startups or individual entrepreneurs. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about social media marketing. I mainly do graphic design, but I have done some social media marketing campaigns for clients as well. So I'm going to share my screen now. All right, so this is all going to be about content. There's a lot of different aspects of social media marketing, like advertising or any PR press work that we're not going to cover just because this is an hour. But we're going to focus on the main aspects of content creation, what kind of content you're going to need for what kind of target market you have. So before starting any social media campaigns, you need to identify your target customer. And I think this is something that most people do in their business plan. So you're going to have a general idea of what your target customer is going to be. But I'm going to give you guys a few ideas of how you can really define that audience and think about the ideal person for your company. So first you need to start by asking yourself, what problem are you trying to solve and who will benefit from your goods or service? And think about your target customer as a person. So my target customer could be Tom. I have a bike shop. My target customer is Tom, who earns $30,000 a year, and he loves fixing bikes, and he lives in this city. So you can kind of think of your target customer as an individual person. And how are they going to benefit from your service is the first question you need to ask yourself. And narrowing this target market down, you can ask yourself a couple questions. Do you have an online presence? If you do, then you can use Google Analytics on your site, see who's checking out your site, how long they're staying, where they're from. It's a really in-depth analytics tool. Also, Facebook Audience Insights is a very in-depth analytics tool as well, to see who's liked your Facebook page, who's been interacting the most, and then you can go narrow down your audience from there. But if you don't have a social media presence already, what you're going to want to do is analyze any data that you may already have. So anyone who's shown the most interest in your business, maybe your current customers, and why they chose you. So you can even do more of an in-depth survey with them. Talk to your customers, talk to your clients, and see why they choose you, what makes your business unique, and yeah, why they were drawn to your company. And also, one thing you can do is look at your competition and see who they're engaging with on their social media, who's commenting, what that average person looks like. And so then you can kind of compare yourself to them. And that's a very good way of doing that if you don't have a social media presence as well. So there's a lot of things that we want to know about these people. And they can be split into two different categories, demographics and psychographics. Demographics are the stats on someone, basically their age, where they're from, how much money they earn, maybe their occupation, marital status. Psychographics are their personality, their values, what they like to do, what they believe in, their interests and opinions. And then within all of that, there's transactional data, which is what they buy, demographic data, which is who buys your product, behavioral data is how they buy. And so this all comes together to make your ideal customer profile. And so it's important to consider all of these things when you are trying to figure out who's the best customer for your company. And lots of times you'll have two different kind of target markets. So you can narrow in on two different groups and then as you grow your company, you can see who connects with your messages more, and then focus your search from there. So these are just generally things to consider when you're thinking about your target market. And so now we're going to have a breakout session and talk to each other about who our target customer is, share some ideas and thoughts. Yeah.
So now that you have identified your target customer, let's keep going with step number 2, and picking your social channels. So hopefully you had enough time to ask yourself, like, okay, what is my target audience, right? So if you didn't have enough time just to think of it, well, we'll keep going, and then we'll go into the next breakout. And if you have any critical questions or to ask, just chat them up in the chat, and then we can go from there. Julia, you want to continue?
All right, I know that was short, but I hope you guys at least had a chance to start thinking about your target customer. There are a lot of aspects to creating this customer profile. So it's going to take a while you're going to have to sit down and do some pretty in-depth research to really get it narrowed out and figure it out too. And it'll come over time. Over time, it's going to develop, and what your ideal customer is like today could be different in the future depending on how your offerings change. So next, we're going to figure out how we're going to pick our social media channels. There are so many social media channels and platforms, and it can get really overwhelming trying to manage posts on all of them. And it's really sometimes just not a good idea to focus on so many, especially if you have a limited budget. It's good to pick 1 to 3 that really resonate with your target market. And it really depends on the demographics. So here's a graphic that kind of gives an overall summary of which platform is good for which target market. As you can see, the age ranges change for each platform. And so LinkedIn's going to have some older users, while Instagram will have some younger ones. And the content that you post on each channel should also align with the purpose of that channel. So LinkedIn's going to be more news articles and conversation, while Facebook is going to be more building relationships. And every channel has pros and cons, but it's good to kind of look at this and then pick 3 that you're going to focus on. Usually they include Facebook, and then lots of businesses like using LinkedIn depending on what your purpose is, and Instagram too. The good thing about Facebook and Instagram is they can kind of go hand in hand with the content. A platform like YouTube, though, requires a lot of resources, and it's a lot more difficult to get content out there. But if you do get content out there, you can really increase brand awareness because there's a lot more viral content that goes on there. So yeah, just look at these platforms and think about the age of your target audience and where they're going to be present and where they're going to be interacting, because it's really important to choose 2 to 3 platforms and really focus in on that. Companies that are similar to you, and look at their platforms. What are they posting and when are they posting, and then who's interacting with them, and also what types of content that they're sharing. One tool that I love is SimilarWeb. What you can do is you type in a website, and it has to have a certain amount of traffic for this data to be available, but you type in a website and you can see where traffic originates from. So if you can go on a website and see, oh wow, 60% of their visitors came from Facebook, and this is my competitor, this is my same market, so I need to focus on Facebook more. Or you can see how many people are coming to their site through paid search ads. So this is a very valuable tool, and it's a paid tool, but they do have a free version that gives a very overall summary of these analytics. So I really recommend that you use SimilarWeb and do a little bit of research on your competitors, because that's really going to help you get more insight in what your target audience is doing and how they're interacting with competitors. So we're going to do a breakout. I know that section was a little bit quicker, but just think about 2 channels that you should focus on for your target customer. I think we're going to break out for 10 minutes. And also, if you guys have any questions throughout this, like they said before, feel free to type something in the chat and I'll do my best to answer again.
So I'm sending out the slides as well for you to have as reference and to be able to look at the table for like the Facebook and the YouTube and all the different channels. I think that'll be a good reference point. So remember, what are 1 or 2 channels that you should be focusing on depending on your customer, on your target customer?
Okay, so the last thing we're going to talk about, sorry, this is a very condensed presentation on social media marketing. There's so many aspects of it, but your content is going to be one of the most important aspects of it. Content is king, as they say, and especially now in the coronavirus times, it's really important to make sure that you're putting high quality content out there that really represents your company well. So first, we're going to talk about overall strategies for your content. You have to think about what your consumer consumes, and you also have to make it really consumable. So make sure that it's very visually appealing. Make sure it's the message that they're going to want to hear and the voice that they're going to want to hear it. Engagement is also great. So posting things that people are going to want to comment on, maybe with questions or something very interactive. You can even do like questions or contests or giveaways. There's so many ideas to increase engagement, and it's hard to list them all right now. But you also want to make it consistent, right? So you want to pick a few topics and stick, or a few categories of posts and stick with them. And you're going to want to post every week, a few times a week. The rule is different with different platforms, but the algorithms of the platforms really push you in the platform when you post regularly versus posting once every 2 weeks. The algorithm isn't going to want to push you because you're not putting out enough content. And so every piece of content needs to have a purpose. So don't just post something just to post it. You have to think about what kind of goals do you have? Do you want this post to generate more likes on Facebook? Do you want people to visit your website? Do you want people to share the post? Do you want people to comment on the post? So think about everything that you put out there and a specific action that you would like to see as a result of your post. So the brand voice, I'm huge on the brand voice because branding is my specialty. You want to make sure that everything that you put out there is consistent with your brand. So typography, make sure you're using the same weights of fonts, the same colors and the same gradients, typefaces, logos. Also, if you're putting a logo on it, make sure you always put it in the same corner. Just be really, really consistent with the visual aspect of your content, as well as the textual aspect. So make sure it sounds like the same person is typing every single post. Don't change up the personality of your brand on your consumers. And so this brand voice also goes back to your ideal customer, because you're going to want to think about what they're going to want to see. Are they going to want to see posts of people like families? Are they going to want to see professionals? What is the feel that you're going for with your brand voice? It is really good. I don't know, sometimes people get logos designed and they don't really have a full brand guidelines. Sometimes it's good to go ahead and make those brand guidelines. So decide on different fonts, like, hey, I'm only going to use this font for my header and this font for my body text. And I'm only going to use these 5 colors, and put that in a document and make sure that all your posts are following those same guidelines. So you really have a visual consistency. So types of content, it's really important to put this content in different categories. And so then you can post it and then test it. Afterwards, you can look at your analytics and track your performance of these different categories of content. And so you can see what works and what doesn't. And so the type of content you want to put out there, it shouldn't be 100% promotional, because that's not what people are going to want to follow. People are going to want to follow stuff that entertains them and provides value to them, first of all. I usually do a ratio of 2/3 providing value to 1/3 self-promotion. It really depends on your industry, because for me, for example, providing value could be sharing logos because my clients want to see what I can make. And that's also self-promotion. So sometimes the categories get a little blurred, but it's good to focus on, okay, what is my target market going to want to see? And so it's good to break this down into a few different categories and stay consistent with these categories. So for example, it could be community impact, team member highlights. It's great to show thought leadership. Posting blog posts, it helps your site's SEO, but it also shows that you're a thought leader in your industry. Sharing news, maybe you have some press coverage of what you've been doing. That's really important to share, and that's something that people are going to be interested in reading. It's kind of all promotions in disguise because you can't be too obvious with over promoting your company. And so just to reiterate, these are broken down into concrete categories because then you can go back and you can track the performance on Facebook. So say my community impact posts aren't doing as well as my team member highlights. So maybe I should do more team member highlights, less community impact. Not that that would actually be the case because most people probably want to see more community impact, but you get the point with that one. So like I said, you test it, you can try to be really strategic with what you post and really keep track of everything. You want to go back and revise everything and optimize it and reiterate it. And especially with using Facebook ads, that's a really good way to test your voice, or the right voice you should use for your brand. See what ads are performing better than others. Are they using visuals? Do they have hashtags or emojis? Is that your kind of audience? So yeah, you want to analyze the best performing content and stick with that. And then here are some social media resources we've included, because this presentation was very brief and it's a very brief overview of everything that social media marketing entails. And there's so much more in every category of social media marketing. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the presentation.
Do we have any other questions about the topic, the content portion that we went through? I think it is a really good content, and yeah, thank you, Julia, for putting all this together. I think it is really important for us to figure out who our customer is, who our competitors are, and then how to deliver a message consistently. So like, one question that comes to mind, like from the beginning, we have been using kind of like the same background, the same letter types and all that stuff. Will you translate that into Facebook, into all the other mediums as well then, in order to keep it consistent?
Are you asking me? Yes.
Yeah.
It's good to get your brand voice and style and keep it consistent throughout everything. Even the small things like how far is your text away from the edge of the graphic? It needs to all be the same. And getting a good graphic designer or being really intentional with the way you put together your graphics is really going to help. Make sure your brand message is consistent. If you look at all big companies, they only use a few primary colors and a few secondary colors. They're not going to use any random color in their graphics. So it's really important to keep that visual consistency through all your platforms. One other thing to note is that there are optimal sizes of graphics for each platform. So if you're posting on Instagram, there's going to be a size that takes up more space on the screen than other sizes. So yeah, there's a lot to look into with that, but just keeping it consistent is key.
One resource that you'd mentioned, or one resource to mention, I guess, off of your comment, Julia, about every graphic is different. I think that Canva is pretty good because you can have like a template specifically like for Facebook or specifically for Instagram. What do you think of Canva as a tool?
So as a graphic designer, I don't really like Canva, but I think it's good for people who don't have the Adobe Creative Suite. If you do have Adobe Creative Suite, I would definitely learn to use it because it's an incredibly useful tool. But I think Canva is really good for people who have no design experience. They have a ton of templates and a ton of resources, and you can just go in there and make your own graphics. And I think that's the great thing about Canva. I personally don't use it, but yeah, I would highly recommend it for anyone who is new to graphic design. They also have the ideal post sizes for the different platforms. So you can go in and say, I'm making a Twitter post and it'll be a certain dimensions, and same with Facebook and Instagram. So, yeah.
So what about like B2B? I know like in our small group, we're talking about like B2B content sharing and getting more views as well. What is your recommendation in that space?
So I would focus a lot on LinkedIn, and also focus a lot on showing yourself as a thought leader, or your company, showing thought leadership throughout your company. So lots of blog posts that'll get your SEO up, and sharing those blog posts on LinkedIn and creating viral content, having people like, comment, share. Also doing LinkedIn marketing is really important for B2B businesses. So I would focus a lot on that.
Awesome. Okay. So does anyone have any other questions or any questions that you want to put in the chat and we can share them up with Julia? Yeah, Doreen, go ahead.
I mentioned in my group, I have, although I'm on lots of social media platforms, I don't use them because I have FOMO. So I FOMO on the business side, and then it pulls me into the personal side, and then I get FOMO, and it's just like, it just stops me from actually making comments or actually creating.
Me personally, spending too much time on social media, it's not very healthy, and it's hard when you're planning a digital marketing campaign to think about it so much. And I don't know, it's just, sometimes it can be a vicious cycle. One thing that could help with that is what I do is, it's called Hootsuite. There's a free version of Hootsuite, and what it is it's a post scheduling platform. And so you can say, you can schedule 20 posts to be published on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And so you sit down 1 week, schedule all of those posts, and then you don't have to worry about it as much. With the liking and commenting, it is really good to keep engaging with your customers on those platforms. So that's something that's good to check in every day or two, and really interact with people if they're interacting with you. That's something that could be outsourced too, if you're really not into that. And so I really suggest scheduling all your posting, and then you don't have to get on the platforms and worry about it too much. Yeah, Hootsuite is free, and until you schedule 20 posts, I think, on 3 different platforms. You can get a paid version. It's not too expensive, but it's a great software to use, especially because you can schedule post times, and different platforms have different ideal times to post. So you can play around with that too.
Hey guys, I had a quick question here. My question is, so for a social, I'm managing, I have a social media team here, and my background is not in social media. For the planning that you're talking about, what is the approximate number of hours it would take one person to kind of set up that schedule?
Per week?
Yeah, per week. Like to set up posts for the week, how long in your experience does that typically take?
Well, once you kind of get the hang of it, it doesn't take too long. In the beginning, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because you're kind of doing a lot more testing, although you should be doing testing throughout and like figuring out what kind of content you're posting. But I would say, so for me, if I'm posting on maybe 2 different platforms, that would probably be 8 posts. It's definitely going to take a few hours, writing the content, going back and forth with edits. Yeah, I think I would say to do the post, maybe 2 hours to do the graphics, and then maybe like 30 minutes to an hour to write the content. But that also depends on how many graphics you're putting together, or if you're just posting pictures or retweeting or reposting like blogs and stuff.
So
really
it looks like
depends on the
we're
kind of
looking
content.
at roughly about like maybe about a whole day's worth of work.
Yeah, it's usually 1 day it's good to just sit down and get it all planned out for the week or two. It also depends on how many platforms too, so it could definitely change. But
no, all right. Well, thank you so much, Julia. That's super helpful. And I think what we'll do now is just go into the last minutes for breakout rooms. We can talk about whatever's kind of, if you're still figuring out your target customer, or figuring out what platform to use, or even just general content discussion. Maybe we can just continue to do that for the last few minutes here, and just kind of get each other's input.